Hello, everyone, and welcome to IAM Love Builders Show with your hosts, Casper and Cheryl Stotham. We're so glad that you tuned in with us today, and we'd like to give a great big shout out to our broadcast partners.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning in with us. I Am Love Builders is a show that's dedicated to all things dealing with relationships and marriages. We want your marriage, your relationship to be an MVP, the most valuable partner. That's what we want for you. So that your marriage can be strong and healthy, and that, our tagline is if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
No doubt about that. Hey, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, and we have a host of services we provide for folks. So we can do anything from TV movie production all the way to TV advertising. So definitely scan that QR code to get more information about that. We have a TV show we taped several months ago, but the premiere is going to be the 21st of November, and you can attend this with us online, live, or in person. And we'll get more details on that later. We have two micro networks that we have set up. If you are a Christian-based programming, you can be on our Kingdom Network, or just a positive programming, you can be on the Love Builder TV network. We have a free Facebook group called the Most Valuable Podcast Network. We do 15-minute interviews to highlight your business, and we share that with over 100,000 social media community contacts that we have. And we have a Most Valuable Partner Club call, and we're making some changes to this. We're going to be talking about this in just a second. So we do this twice a month, and we've had some upgrades to that program. So we're going to talk about that. And one of those upgrades is we have a new MVP Premier membership, and we have an MVP Lite membership that we're going to cover. All right. So our MVP program has evolved.
Yes. That's one thing about life. When you're doing this journey called life, you're always evolving and growing. At least you should be.
You should be, right. You should be planning, doing, reviewing, and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So we started our MVP program toward the top of the first part of the year.
Right.
And we've been doing those live trainings twice a month ever since January, I believe, or February.
Yes,
right?
I think it was January, February.
Yeah. And it's been going well and stuff, but we wanted to really kind of expand that out to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to take advantage of those trainings. So we've created two new programs, one on the bottom end and one on the top end, that we want to kind of delve into.
Okay.
But the MVP program, as Cheryl's mentioned, is the Most Valuable Partner program. And as we've been doing marriage coaching for 16 plus years, we found that a lot of couples want us to fix their spouse. Right? They come to us and say, "Yeah, can you fix him, or can you fix her?"
Well, I'm perfect. I don't need any fixing.
You don't need to fix. Yeah,
it's you.
Right. And we're like, no, actually, we need to work on you. So we came up with the Most Valuable Partner program because we work on that partner.
Yeah, If each partner works on themselves,
now you need both partners working together.
Yes.
Right. So each one needs to be participating. If one is working and the other one's not, that's not a healthy relationship anyway. Right. But if both parties are willing to do the work, then that's what our MVP program is all about.
Yes.
So we have this exclusive Facebook group for MVP members, and it was a paid membership. So they had to pay a minimum of $297 a year just to get access to the live trainings.
Correct.
Right. So we did these 15-minute trainings before that. We call them MVP Huddle. So we did a 15-minute free training, and then we would at the top of the hour we would go into the paid training. So we have decided to open up that paid training to folks, and we call that the MVP Lite. So the MVP Lite, they get free access to our live MVP club calls twice a month. They get free access to exclusive Facebook club group. So we would get them in there. And then they would get electronic copy of Divorce Proofing Your Marriage. That's our book. So they get an electronic copy of that. And they're going to get access to the recordings of the 7 keys to divorce proofing your marriage. And they're going to get access to the recordings of the 7 keys to a healthy relationship.
Okay.
So this is a scaled down version of our paid MVP program, but it still gives them a lot of access to information that's always evolving, but they get access to us basically twice a week. I'm sorry,
Twice a month.
Twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. So that's available to anyone right now. They can go to our website, IamLoveBuilders.com. They can click on MVP, and they can sign up for MVP Lite and get access to all the training that we do, at least for that program.
Yes.
Right. Now, we also have put in place something we're calling MVP Premier. And there are a lot of high-end couples, or very active couples, professional couples, maybe a Fortune 500 CEO kind of person, to where they are busy, but they have struggles with their marriage just like anybody else.
Yes.
In fact, they may have more struggles
Right.
because of the level of operation that they're at.
Mm-hmm.
They may be missing some things and having some challenges with their marriage. And we know that if they get a divorce, it's a larger.
It happens on a larger scale because the misconception is that because a person has money, people at the lower end of the financial totem pole seem to think that the more money you have, the less problems you have.
Right.
But that's not true.
That's not true. They have more problems. And because of that, they also have, it's a larger expense if they break up.
Right. Well, they say the higher you are, the greater the fall.
Right.
So there's a lot more to lose.
Yeah. There's alimony. There's, the splitting of the resources.
Change of lifestyle.
The children, selling assets.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that goes into it that they could lose if they get a divorce.
Right.
So we want to come up with it. We came up with this MVP Premier program to address those folks specifically.
Yes.
But we can only help about 6 couples at this level, and you'll see why here in a second as we go through this, because they get all the platinum benefits, and you'd have to go on our MVP site to hear about the platinum benefits. But they also get an all-inclusive door-to-door chartered travel arrangements. Mm-hmm. So we pick them up from their home right in the front, probably with a limousine or Uber Black kind of situation, take them to the chartered airport and fly them into a destination. And these are exclusive resort type locations. We have about 4 of them kind of selected. So they would fly into that location. They're going to get gourmet meals for this 5-day. It's a 5-day intensive program. So again, going to get gourmet meals during the entire stay for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We're going to have maid service on site and things like that. They're going to get 1 romantic dinner out on the town on us. They're also going to get 1 daytime spending trip in town, and we're going to give them some money to spend. So obviously they're going to want to spend all that money we give them.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as a bonus, a lifetime access to the to us via phone, text, or even a video chat. So this program is catered to the individuals. So the pricing is also catered. We're not even going to talk about pricing here. But if that's someone that, if you fit that criteria, we definitely want to have a discussion, and then we'll let you know what's going on with that. All right. So we are going to now take a really quick break. And when we come back, we have some MVPs on the line. At least we have half the MVP. Hopefully the other MVP will show up here in a second. We're going to bring them back so that we can have a great discussion. They have an awesome story and a great program we wanted to share with you. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back in just about 10 seconds. All right, we are back with I Am Love Builder Show, Casper and Cheryl, and we have our special MVP guests that are on the line. So we have Reverend Dr. Stephanie and Dan, he's there, but he's kind of transparent right now.
He's here in spirit at the moment.
And you guys have a lot of stuff going on, and we have 5 segments to kind of break it all down. But the first thing we like to do with couples is kind of hear about your story on, how you met and dating and engagement and marriage and stuff like that. So we kind of like to get a background on that from our couples. So
okay. It might work out better. Dan's not here because he doesn't like the first story that I always tell. Dan and I are about to be married 30 years. This year will be our 30th. But we have known each other pretty much all of our lives. We met at church as children, like in children's church.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And when I was about 10, I know this is depending on your faith background, you may not understand what I'm getting ready to say, but I was impressed, and I knew at 10 years old that I was going to be marrying Danny Holmes.
Oh, wow.
What I did not know as a 10-year-old is you shouldn't tell people that.
Right.
So I told his sister, who told him, who he was 12.
Mm-hmm.
And the report back to me was, I would not marry you if you were the last person on the face of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And you are Medusa in the making.
Oh,
so
wow.
That's how we started out at 10 and 12.
Yeah.
But I think he's changed his mind since then.
Yeah.
So we grew up in church, and we've been together since we were 16 and 18.
Wow.
Very good.
So when did he say, wait a minute, she's kind of hot?
It took him a long time. When you're in a youth group and there's like 12 kids, and there's usually 2 or 3 guys and the rest are girls, he and some of the other guys had a little bit longer to make sure date everybody at the youth group. So finally, at 14, 15, he had decided that maybe we could try this thing, but then I decided to play hard to get a little bit. So we had to turnabout's fair play. And then my senior year of high school, I went to a Christian school, so there's no such thing as prom. You did a junior, senior formal with no dancing, of course. We've been together ever since then.
Well, all right. Wow. And are there children, Stephanie?
We do. We have 2 adult daughters. They decided that they were going to get married within 6 months of each other. So our youngest got married last December of 2023, and our oldest just got married June of this year. So it went wedding to wedding, back to back. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Now, do they live close to where you guys live, or?
Well, one lives close-ish. So we're in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Right. And our youngest met her husband at Lee University. They both met in their freshman year, and they got married and graduated from Lee. So they still live around the Lee area, which is kind of around the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. Okay. So it's about 2 hours. In fact, that's why Dan is late today. He was just leaving Chattanooga, seeing our daughter in coming here. And then our other daughter lives in Omaha, and that's a big change, because that's not easy to get to, like Chattanooga. So we missed her, but she's doing a great job doing what she's doing out in Omaha.
Oh, awesome. Very good. So now Casper tells me that you all are both reverends, pastors.
Well, ordained ministers, but not pastors. We're kind of like a parachurch.
Okay. All right. And so what started you on that journey?
Oh, I hear feet coming. He approaches. So I was a licensed professional counselor since about 2001, 2002. And I always felt like I wanted to work ministering to the church. Again, marriage and families are in crisis, and work with Christian couples and families. And so I'd always kind of had like a counseling ministry. Then a few years ago, as we'll kind of get into some of our story about autism and neurodiversity, we've gone into a more specific niche. But sometimes in really conservative circles, sometimes some men can't hear from women. So I bet if I said the same thing, they would listen. And I was like, yeah, that's unfortunately the truth in some situations. So we actually both then became ordained so that we could work together in ministry. It's also a little more protected than being a Christian counselor,
Right.
a licensed reverend. And we've been doing that about 2 or 3 years together.
Amen. Well,
Mr.
Dan, so nice to meet you.
Well, it's good to be here.
So we want to hear from you. Now, we heard a little bit about how you weren't going to marry this 10-year-old girl, even if she was the last person on the earth.
Wow.
However, Dan,
It's his
something
favorite
happened.
story.
Something happened, Dan.
Something
You gotta fill in. Something happened.
Oh, well, a lot happened. Between 12 and 10, I guess she was 10 and 20. Junior high, high school, college. And wow.
His brain matured.
What even? Yeah, maybe that's just the only answer. You fast forward through all the ups and downs through all of those years, and me growing, not being as much of a teenage punk as I once was, even to today. It turned into, after a couple of other a couple of other relationships, it turned into, I really did miss, when in those windows of times when it was good, I really did miss. And then that absence in those gaps drew me back in, from a heart perspective. That, it took that doesn't mean I always acted well.
I know the feeling. Yeah. But 30 years later, here you are.
Here we are, 30 years. Well, 30 years.
Almost.
Almost 30 years.
8 weeks.
When is your anniversary?
December.
Oh, wow.
All right. Very good. Awesome. So we are so glad. So you were telling us, Stephanie, about both of you becoming licensed ministers.
Mhm.
So now that's the ministry part, but you got your educational part is in psychology.
Mhm.
Psychiatry.
So my degrees don't go together very well. So I started out with my bachelor's in psychology, knowing I was going into counseling. So then my master's in counseling, those two kind of go together. It wasn't until a few years ago I went back to school to get my doctorate in education, and then with organizational leadership and communication background, because the couples we work with, I'm sure all couples have communication issues, but our couples really have high conflict. So I went back to school to get some more conflict management, negotiation, mediation skills.
Hold that thought. We're late on a break. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back in just a second. All right, we are back with I Am Love Builders show with Stephanie and Dan. Dan, he's not transparent anymore. He's actually here.
No, he's here in the flesh.
In the flesh. All right. Our special MVP guest. And Stephanie, you were starting to break down the area of expertise you guys have started working in. And I know one of the terms you used, that when you first told me about it, I was like, what does that even mean? Is NeuroDiverse Christian coaching something?
Yeah, it's a mouthful, isn't it? And our big thing is the International Association of NeuroDiverse Christian Marriage. Like IAM Love Builders, much shorter, easier to get on there.
So tell us what does all that mean?
So the word neurodiversity, a lot of people define it in different ways. How we define it is the Harvard medical way, which is marriage, or a person who is neurodivergent is someone who has ADHD, is on the autism spectrum, or maybe has a learning difference or wiring like dyslexia. So for those who are one or both partners could be neurodivergent to make a neurodiverse couple. So we kind of got into it because our oldest daughter was diagnosed with what used to be called Asperger's back in 2005. So I started shifting towards ministering and working towards family with special needs children. But then in 2019, Dan was diagnosed on the autism spectrum as well. So we began to kind of see the trend, and the science supports that autism is hereditary. So we started thinking, there's a lot more couples and families like us. And so we decided to essentially be the resource we wish we would have had for our marriage and family.
I know when I was on your website, there's a lot of discussion around this topic, which I had never heard of it until, I talked to you, but now it's like, there's just a lot out there that people aren't even aware of. And then I was, and we're going to talk about your book here, probably the next segment, but you guys have a lot of endorsements or people who are backing you on your book, that's coming out right the first of the year.
Yeah, we're excited about it. It's kind of the same thing. Well, I told you we had 2 weddings, December of 2023. We also launched our first book, December of 2023. And then right during that second wedding, we had the deadline of July 1st to get the second book ready. And our daughter got married June 29th. So we had 2 books and 2 weddings going on. So I think the first book that we actually wrote as a family. Our 2 oldest daughters helped write that book. Originally, I had written a book back in 2015. It was really my perspective. And my oldest daughter was like, well, you're kind of telling my story. I'm going to tell part of my story because I'm in my 20s now. So it evolved from her and I to Erica and then to Dan. Dan put the dad's perspective in, and we put kind of our marriage, what was going on in our marriage over top what was going on in the story. And the 2 girls writing from their perspective and their sibling relationship. And so the first book is kind of our family story, kind of prequel to the book that's about to launch, which is more research-based. And a lot of different people were interviewed to put their stories into the upcoming book.
Oh, okay. So those folks were interviewed and are part of the book?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Yeah, there's quite a few of them. And can folks get access to both your books from your website, Christian NeuroDiverse Marriage.com?
So the purple book, Uniquely Us, you can get that one at the ChristianNeuroDiverseMarriage.com. But we have 2 companies. Our other company is Autism Spectrum Resources for Marriage and Family. So that one is actually HomesASR.com, and we call it the brown book. The family book is available on the Autism Spectrum Resource, and the Uniquely Us is available on the Christian Marriage site.
Yes, interesting. So give us some, what would be some tips, I guess, to kind of even know that you may have some of this going on in your family, with your children or with your spouse?
I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to go to you since I know you just did a workshop on your client might be on the spectrum if. So what are some things for adults?
Oh, wow. It really helped to have the bingo sheet with me.
I know.
One of the things that quickly, I'll give you a couple that quickly come to mind. One of them is some rigid thinking, black and white. It either is on or it's off. And then if you disagree, then there's no moving, right? I'm sticking to my opinion, and we're not going to move into a shade of gray of anything. We're either going to stay here or we're, that's it. One, and it's everybody can do that occasionally. It's right. Every conversation tends to be that way. Every dialogue that has a, how about we do like this? No, let's don't. And then that's it. It stops. You can pick, almost anything from what you're going to buy at the grocery store to, some larger conversations like what's family vacation look like this year?
Oh my goodness.
What is Christmas going to be like this year? It runs the gamut from, but what makes it different is it is ubiquitous across conversations. It's not like there's just this showed up today and you've never seen it before and then you won't see it again for 3 months. It is a regular challenge in communication that you're seeing. And it's frustrating for the spouse because, there is no dialogue. There's no conversation. There's just this one point. And if you don't agree, you just kind of have to leave it. It doesn't go anywhere. Another one that kind of quickly comes to mind, and I'll probably have to tag team this one with you, is theory of mind. That's the ability to understand what someone else is possibly thinking. Everything from watching their face, they're happy, they're sad, they are in some, maybe they're preoccupied with work or something like that. Based on context, based on situation, based on whatever frequency of interaction you've had with them. But it's that inability to think, oh, well, they must think like me because this is what I'm thinking right now.
Right.
Instead of what's going on in their world is way more influential in how they're thinking, what they're doing, what was going on with their kids, their family, their whatever, and whatever situation you find them in. This is Christmas morning, or is this just a regular old Monday going to work?
Mm-hmm.
And, why don't you talk about how that kind of influences what's the interaction in the family? I mean, I kind of phrased it in any two random people, but put a relational spin on that.
Right, because we know with men and women, sometimes guys are a little more black and white thinker, but it's a little more kind of the next level with someone on the autism spectrum. So what Dan was talking about with theory of mind encompasses a lot of things. So that, like, you also might hear mindfulness. If I'm being mindful of you, then I'm holding you in your mind. You are a person with your own mind, and I'm a person with my mind. And so we need to be attuned, or we need to be on the same page. And that can be a problem sometimes for the spectrum partner, attunement, understanding that other people have different opinions and preferences. Theory of mind also encompasses empathy, compassion, being able to be compassionate for someone or empathetic to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of those can be problematic.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and pick that up on the other side of the break. You're listening to I Am Love Builder, the show with Casper and Cheryl. We have our MVP guests on the line, Dan and Stephanie Holmes. We'll be right back in just a second. All right, we are back with I Am Love Builder, the show, Casper and Cheryl. We have our special MVP guests in the studio with us, Dan and Stephanie Holmes. And it's interesting you guys are talking about this because, at least from my vantage point, that sounds like every couple that we deal with, because they're kind of stuck in this, it's my way or the highway, or they're stuck in this thing to where they're right and the other person's wrong. And they're not willing to even compromise at any level, and not in a bad way compromise. They're not even wanting to collaborate and just say, look, okay, let's try it. Let's try it that way this time and see if it works, kind of thing. Or at least we have this communication tool that helps couples work through these tough issues and come up with a resolution that turns conflict into a more intimacy kind of situation where they are actually closer together after that conflict than they were before. But it sounds like when you guys talk about it, it's even more severe. It sounds like it's like, no, they make a decision and they don't even want to talk about it. They don't even want to discuss it at all. Does that make sense?
Yes, because usually the person on the spectrum struggles with like chit chat and just talking about nothing, which is kind of essential to building relationship. Also, people on the spectrum sometimes get caught up in their what we call special or passionate interest, like to the detriment sometimes. So everybody has a hobby, but it's like I'd rather be doing that than being with my marriage and my family. So there can be all kinds of discussions and arguments about how much money is spent, how much time is spent. Maybe the person on the spectrum only wants to go on vacation to train museums because they have a train thing. And so every vacation we can only go if we go to a train museum. Doesn't matter if anybody else wants to go to see a train museum, but that's what they want to do. So it's autism means selfism, and it's not selfishness like we would think of with narcissism. It's self-referencing. I only have myself to reference, and so I only reference myself in my perspective, versus like with narcissism, it's I know you have a different perspective, but I want you to lose and me to win.
Yeah.
So it's different, but a lot of times before couples find out their spouses on the spectrum, usually they're Googling narcissism because they look a little bit alike, but the intention is completely different. One is ignorance and one is malicious intent.
Mm. Some of what you said kind of reminded me when you talked about one getting on a topic and they tend to only see it from that perspective and they're really not able to move from that. They kind of stay there. That sounded so much like our daughter. we
Yeah.
we have a daughter with Down syndrome, and sometimes that's kind of how she thinks, and we're like trying to get her to broaden her horizons and see that you're not the only one who has a thought or who has an opinion or who has a choice. But some days it doesn't go over well.
Yeah.
And that same kind of thinking can be in the autism spectrum for sure.
Yeah.
And I know early on when we were looking for support to help our daughter, there were a lot of possibilities of dual diagnosis between autism and Down syndrome. So we did learn a little bit because some of what our challenges were with her was similar. However, it's hard for me, I'm going to be honest, to even try to visualize that in a marriage situation. It's one thing being a parent and child dynamic, but a husband and wife, that's how. What are something you can give us? How do they work through that?
Yeah.
I'll add one more caveat to that. A person on the spectrum can be male or female, but it's one more complexity is if a person's view of headship is final authority versus like servant leadership, servant leader, a servant style of leadership. So if I'm the authority and I'm the final authority and therefore all that I care about matters. So we add the Christian faith as a weapon on top of this.
Right.
That gets very complicated. And we don't usually see a lot of success in those situations, because if you think about, it's one thing to teach somebody new strategies and skills, but if someone has that belief system that I'm right and I'm in charge and no one can tell me otherwise, that is a much more difficult thing to budge. But usually it's helping the couple with strategies and skills and communication and problem solving and mindfulness and building compassionate awareness.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of our coaching as well, to where you really need both parties that are willing to work at it, because if just one is on board and the other one's not, or vice, it's just not going to work. You got to have both parties engaged.
Yeah. But you want to talk a little bit about when you get a spouse, how many minutes we have before we go to our next segment? Because when he gets a spouse and we have no contact with the wife, it is not really super helpful.
It's really hard.
We've got 3 minutes in this segment, but we have 2 more segments after this. So
all right. Well, we'll start and we'll see. So if I've met the guy for the first time and the spouse is not part of our coaching practice, consider everything we've just said. It's very difficult to understand how much of what I'm being told is the whole truth.
You're getting half of the story.
I'm getting half of the story, and at most half of the story, right?
But important context are usually missing.
But what is, because of the self-referencing we spoke about a minute ago, and because of the theory of mind issue, that ability to assess, well, she was mean on purpose. You immediately put that into, well, what else is going on in that situation?
Right.
So you have to dig, or you've got to ask questions that help surface other parts of what was really going on, so that what you're being told it fits inside a context, and it's not going to be a volunteered context, either because it was forgotten or because it wasn't noticed or some other reason.
Yeah.
But it makes it difficult, because when it's not there, we can't share information to understand. I heard this. What do you know about who they are to help me put this into some kind of context?
Right. It sounds a lot like we talk about issues, but then there's hidden issues. We have to dig to find out what the actual real problem is that's going on. There's a lot of surface stuff people talk about, but we find out that at the end of the day, there's a lack of respect, there's a lack of caring, there's a lack of love, a lack of the foundational things that we can build on. So we have to kind of bring those up and clean those up so we can start building that relationship back up.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So what are the statistics of
Okay,
neural?
Hold your question, Cheryl.
Okay.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in just a second. All right, we are back with our special MVP guests, Dan and Stephanie Holmes, and they are authors. They have a neurodiversity Christian couples coaching program, and the website is christianneurodiversitymarriage.com. They have a new book that we have to talk about your book a little bit more and kind of go into some details. But Cheryl had a question for you, so let's go ahead and start there.
So tell me, how prevalent are neurodiverse marriages?
Okay, so I think we can extrapolate a little bit of information. We know that the CDC says that 1 in 36 children are on the autism spectrum that's diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2019, a 2.1 million participant study over 5 countries over in Europe found an 80% hereditary rate.
Mm-hmm.
So we can maybe say that if someone is on the spectrum, there's a 80% chance one of the parents is also on the spectrum. So the CDC just released that they have 5.4 million adults in America who are diagnosed on the autism spectrum, but we know that there are many, many, many more that are not diagnosed. So it is more prevalent than we originally thought.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know as you're talking about it, I'm saying, yeah, I can. It seems like every other couple we talk to is in that category. It's kind of funny. Well, not funny, but that seems to be the situation. So
I was going to say, could it be? I know we're as a culture, we're getting more into mental health and acknowledging the fact that there are those who have challenges of addressing day to day due to some mental health issues. Mm-hmm. Could it be that we also have misdiagnosed a lot of things, and we've just thrown them all into this one bucket? But if what you're saying is true and the statistics that you're giving, some of that could be people who are on the spectrum, so to speak, huh?
Yeah, we found in our research, we researched 300 individuals, 108 of them were those who were on the spectrum, and over 60% of them were diagnosed with 2 to 3 other things before mm-hmm. they had their proper autism. So rarely do you see autism pure, so to speak. Usually it could be co-occurring with depression, anxiety, or ADHD, or a learning difference or challenge. And mm-hmm. so women will usually be misdiagnosed with 5 to 7 mental health diagnoses before they are properly identified, and the men about 3 to 5 misdiagnoses before they get to a proper identification. And it's because the terms have changed so much. Originally most people think autism and they think Rain Man, they think low IQ, they think a person who can't function. But we now know people like Elon Musk, right? Who is no one, you might not like him, but you can't say he's not successful or intelligent. So we have quite the range from someone who would be represented on what we used to call the lower end of the functioning to someone like Elon Musk, who his big struggle is relationships, is really where he struggles in social context and social communication.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. That makes me think of once, this was many years ago, I saw a documentary, and it was about this young man who was absolutely high functioning. He was extremely intelligent. He had a very high IQ, and he was very dominant in music and things with his hands. However, daily basic hygiene things he just couldn't function. Um, Communication with others, he just couldn't function. Taking care of himself, he couldn't function. But on an intellectual scale, he was off the charts.
Yeah.
So, it's like, how many people are actually in that arena?
Yeah. So I pulled up your website. Let's talk about your book and the work that you guys do on this website.
Sure. So we have a lot of things that we want to put together for people because sometimes there's still a stigma and a bias towards getting a diagnosis as an adult. And so we try to make some things easy. So a free thing on our website is the blog. Every Friday there's a new blog where either a wife, a husband, someone who's neurodivergent, someone who's neurodiverse is contributing to kind of new knowledge that might, be in your situation. We have courses, some free courses and paid courses that are available to you. Usually when we are taking a couple on, I onboard them with one of my courses, because I was saying the same thing over and over the first 5 or 6 coaching sessions, like I'm sure you guys do too. And I was like, okay, why don't you go ahead and watch this? And then once you've watched it, come and let's just dive in, and answer some questions. So we have courses. We also train clinicians, clergy, counselors, and coaches who want to be neurodiversity aware and trained. So we have that. We are usually in operation of Dan runs a men's group and I have a women's group. So that's paid couples coaching. And then the other tab that's on there says Uniquely Us. And if you hit the Uniquely Us tab, that is where the book that is launching in March. It is available for pre-order right now. And we're really hoping that the book will end up in physical bookstores as well. So go ahead and get that pre-order on, y'all.
Yes, get the pre-order going.
Oh, and the podcast, Dan's like, oh yeah, we have a podcast. Neurodiverse Christian Couples podcast, a new podcast every Monday where we might be talking to a researcher or another couple. And then Dan has his own show called Just the Guys. And he and about 3 to 5 other guys who are on the spectrum kind of talk about a topic or things that they're learning or just things from their point of view. So yeah, thank you, babe.
Very good. Very good. Can you access those podcasts from your website?
Yes. On that front page, when you originally had the main page up, there is a Listen Now button. And that's where you'll find that.
I don't know if I can see that. Listen Now.
I don't know how to get you back to the front page. We'll have to do some website optimizing.
There you go.
There it is. Listen Now.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. That is awesome. Yeah, I was good. I was just kind of skimming through the site. I'm like, man, there's a lot of stuff. You got a lot of stuff going on. That is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. All right. I'm going to go ahead and click back off of there. But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff you guys are doing, and you have those podcasts and stuff. I'd love to talk to you more about those podcasts.
Okay.
So you said you have a couple. How long have you been doing the podcast?
2020?
2021, I think. I
Awesome.
think it's about 2021.
A few
Is
years.
about 180-ish episodes or something like that?
Now, are they audio and video or just audio?
The podcast itself is audio, but then what I started doing, because some people were saying, hey, we can't pay attention for a whole hour, I started chopping some of them in half and then putting them up on YouTube. So on YouTube, you can see the video and the audio, and they're usually in 20 to 30-minute segments, where the podcast, because we have commuters, like we're in Atlanta. So Atlanta is 1 hour from Atlanta. So it will take an hour podcast to get you on your commute. So the podcast usually is 45 minutes to an hour. And then the YouTube, I even have some like little short reels on there too. So the YouTube channel has video.
Very good. Okay, we're going to take another quick break, our last break for the show. You're listening to I Am Love Builder Show with Casper and Cheryl. We'll be right back in just a quick moment.
you don't link to.
All right, we are back with I Am Love Builder Show, Casper and Cheryl, and we have our special MVP guests on the line, Dan and Stephanie Holmes. And you guys were talking about your podcasts and stuff, and I'd love to visit with you guys about your podcasts. We might be able to incorporate them into our micro networks to get them some more exposure. So I'd love you to talk.
Yeah, wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, why don't you talk about Just the Guys? That was Dan's idea, and it's like a spin-off show of the main show. But it's one of the most one of the favorite episodes. So, what was kind of your idea for that, and what do y'all do?
Well, it's effectively that's just it. It was Just the Guys. I mean, it showed up, I don't know, a year plus later than the other podcast, and the goal was to get an audience that maybe wanted to resonate with a couple of folks that thought and felt and looked and sounded and processed like them. That was kind of the idea. As maybe I don't want to be lectured to by whatever doctor's guy is on the other podcast. Maybe there's somebody that is just more like me, more relatable.
Sure.
And that was kind of the idea. And so there was a couple of guys at the time. Then we said, hey, what do y'all think of this? And we do it once a month. And most of us were working. So that was about all we had the capacity to do.
Yeah.
And it really is, from a topic perspective, it covers, almost as much stuff as we can think of. Everything from preparing for school season with small kids to preparing to go on vacation, Christmas. What does it mean to give gifts? How do you celebrate? Because you find a lot of times the guys don't tend to want a whole lot, or certainly don't necessarily want to celebrate to the same extent that everybody else does.
Right.
So go back to the theory of mind thing, or the birthday can be very muted and the spouse can be feeling left out. But from the guy's perspective, he treated her just like he wanted to be treated. So he doesn't see any particular pain there.
Yes.
But that's kind of the idea.
Yeah. He's not speaking her love language necessarily.
Speaking more his love language.
That's right. He is.
Or more of a guy's love language. I did a podcast episode last year, and I'm following it up with the book called Mastering Adam, and it's the biblical Adam. And what I did was I interviewed Christian men, married Christian men, and we just broke down Adam, just all aspects of Adam. And the subtitle was Becoming the Best Adam for Your Eve. And on the last episode, I had my wife on, Cheryl, on the last episode to kind of wrap things up. But similar to your, Just a Guy situation, where it's just guys and we're Christian men, we're talking about how do we perfect on the Adam man? How do we make him better? So that's what that was about.
Yeah, and it's a similar thing. We're just looking for, we did a topic that was we took one of the guys that's on the podcast had just written a book, so we riffed on his book for a whole podcast episode.
Yeah, there you go.
And used it as an opportunity to take his domain knowledge and apply it relationally. Then we talk about success stories, things that work, things that haven't worked. Everything from tips to, a different way to think about maybe the same idea, but maybe this new analogy or something like that resonates better. You can put it in your head and imagine it with greater lucidity or something. Just anything to bring that
hope.
Yeah, that and just recognition. This is something I identify with, because you started out with that. You started out with that tool that you mentioned earlier on, and you said that we want to make conflict something that brings greater intimacy.
Right.
And fundamentally, we've got the same goal, but the efforts just have to be applied in a different way. It's not use this tool the way that everybody else would. We're going to go for the same thing, but our pathway to get there will be a little different.
Yeah. And we have 4 minutes left to this show, and I just want to make sure, because you guys are doing so much, I just want to make sure, is there anything that we haven't discussed yet that you want to kind of unpack a little bit?
You talk about groups.
We really love groups, and so part of that is based on the neuroscience that we follow. Neurotheologian Dr. Jim Wilder, that talks about in relationships we need joy, which you said at the beginning. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
Exactly.
We need joy. We need hesed, which is attachment love. We need a group identity that will call us back to who we are. So not a group that will just kind of kvetch about how difficult things are, but a group that will, we are Christians. We are a people who,
Right.
and when you're not your best self, call you back to your best self through healthy corrections. That healthy correction really comes through relationship and joy. And I'm for you. And a lot of our families don't know other couples and marriages like them. And so kind of getting together in men's group, women's groups, or couples groups, we find, a better success rate when both parties are doing their portion and learning about themselves and each other and calling themselves back to their Christ identity versus
It's more of a joy model than a shame model. You can attempt to do the same thing with correction, right? Anybody that's had kids knows that you can shame your kids into doing nigh unto anything you want. But while you got the end goal, you may not get the long-term gain out of that. But if you encourage them to, this is how we do it as a pick your group identity, it'll be harder on the front end because that's a difficult thing to consume. It's a difficult thing to work internally, but it pays dividends in the long term. And that's what we've chosen to go that route because it is a more sustainable way of life. A lot of our folks are getting recognized in their, in midlife, in their 40s and 50s, and you've still got a lot of life left. It's you're not 20 anymore, but you're not 90 or 100 or whatever.
We
so
hopefully have a lot of marriage left. We hope.
And you put in some effort now in the next handful of years, and you get to enjoy the next 20, unlike you experienced the first. And that's really what we're hoping to achieve out of using a identity model instead of a shame-based model.
Yeah. One of the saddest things we see are couples who are even empty nesters at this point in their life, but they are, they've grown apart, they don't even like each other anymore. And we're like, guys, this should be the time that you're just having a blast, right? You don't have the responsibility of the kids, changing diapers, or getting them to their,
all their sports
events and stuff. You could just have a great time, and they're miserable, right? So we're trying to help them with that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we sure appreciate you guys coming on the show. Like I said, don't disconnect. We want to visit with you before we are done. Folks, you've been listening to I Am Love Builders show. We want you to go to our website right now and get a free ebook or take a 5 or 20-minute love assessment. You can do that at IamLoveBuilders.com. You can do that right after the show here. You can become an MVP now for free. So you can start that process and get access to a lot more training, a lot more support, because at the end of the day, we want you all to become MVPs. And that's the most valuable partner in your relationship. And if you're working on that and your partner's working on that together, you guys have a phenomenal relationship. And we always say, remember, if you're not having fun,
you're not doing it right.
We will see you guys on the next show.